Guys, Nick here bringing you another One Piece related video. Sorry for what will be probably one of the worst quality videos I've put out, but I wanted to get a fast response to these leaks. I was at my locals when these leaks happened, so I finished up my locals, headed straight home, and we are now making this at 9 o'clock at night. But the leaks happened, guys, or some of them did, for OP10. We have found out that the Usopp leaks were confirmed, and so were the Rebecca Kiros being blue SRs. So let's take a look at all the cards that got leaked. Let's go over them and kind of address the elephant in the room. Does Rebecca get better, or is Usopp actually going to be good? These are questions that have been asked. So let's take a look at it. All right, so for Usopp, for those that didn't see my last video, or haven't checked out the leaks themselves, Usopp is a 4-life blue-black leader. He is Dressrosa and Straw Hat categorized. He then says your cost 2 or greater Dressrosa type characters have a +1 cost. So on the surface, this is just good way of preventing them from being removed. But other than that, like, okay, what does this really do? If there's not a whole lot of synergy for upping the cost of cards, there wasn't going to be a whole lot of use of this. So far, we had some Straw Hat cards that enjoyed it, but they aren't Dressrosa Straw Hats. Though we did get some Dressrosa Straw Hats this time around. And then the other effect is this: once per turn on your opponent's turn, this effect may be activated when one of your Dressrosa type characters are removed from the field by your opponent's effects, or KO'd. So this means if it is bottom decked, if it's trashed, if it's KO'd by an effect specifically, it cannot be attacked into and removed. It has to be by effect. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand, draw a card. So this leader has a draw. It has a draw ability. It's more or less a replacement. It's basically, hey, you lost a card, now here's a replacement card. You don't get to control it, so it's a little less good than something like the Boa ability, but it's still pretty strong ability. And like I said, the first ability isn't bad. So right off the bat, when you're looking at it, it doesn't necessarily scream to me that this leader is going to be insane. The color typing is really, really good. But the rest of the leader is kind of like, okay, it's good, but I don't know like how good. It really kind of comes down to what support cards. Well, the very first thing that we got leaked for this leader is our 7-drop Rebecca. So Rebecca is going to be a blue character, 7 cost. Hey, I kind of guess that it might be a 7 cost top end with low power. And guess what? She has 4K power, which is a lot more than any Rebecca we've had so far. But 7 cost 4, 1K counter. Great. Love it. Already kind of into this. Let's see what it does. On play, if there is a 8 cost or greater character in play, mind you, it does not say on your side of the field. Just in general, if there's an 8 cost or greater in play. So if your opponent ramps out in a deck and puts out an 8 cost character, this character gets this ability. At least from how this translates and reads. It does not say you have to control an 8 cost or more in play. It just has to be in play in general. Draw a card. Okay, that's pretty good. Then, so I don't know right now. I'm not 100% if this says you only get this part for the draw because there's a period. So I assume so. Like you only get the draw if there's an 8 cost in play. The rest of it seems to be just all the time. Then reveal up to 2 cost 7 or lower Dressrosa type characters other than Rebecca from your hand. Play one of them as active. Then if the other has a cost 4 or less, play it as rested. Fucking nuts card. And for people that don't understand why this card is nuts, let's have Coliseum out, right? Like, so if this part here is not gated by this, which it doesn't seem like it is because there is a period breaking it, and generally that means that only this effect is done by this. So this is just there. So all the time, this is, hey, show 2 cards from your hand. You get to play a 7 cost Dressrosa character. So currently outside of Rebecca. So you can't play a Rebecca. For either of these cards, you cannot reveal a Rebecca. Which is good. It means you can't play 4-drop Rebecca with it. So it's more balanced than Gecko in that regard. But prior to any cards that we get down here, so ignore all this text down here you might see. This could put 7-drop Luffy out. If we have Coliseum out, this character is it's only a 4K swing, but it can clear something small. It then gets to play a 7-drop Luffy, which gets to attack twice. And it can play something else, like Arrested Kiros, for instance, to pop something. Or it could put out a, let me think, like an Orlumbus out for 4 costs. It's 4 costs and less. This could throw out so many things. This is such an insanely good card for Dressrosa. Now, note, it is a better and worse Gecko Moria. It's worse because its stat line on its own is not as great. It does require the cards to be in your hand, not your trash, so that is slightly worse. So it's a little bit more balanced in that regard. But Rebecca likes to stack her hand and put a lot of stuff in her hand, so like playing for this isn't that difficult. But it also has the potential to draw you a card, which means you could get a card from the top of your deck to be able to do this stuff. This card is bonkers strong with Colosseum, and it might make like Rebecca decks have to run Colosseum even at a higher cost. At the 3 might be the needed. It might be up to a 4 even, because it might just be so necessary to have it before this card goes down play. Usopp's going to love this card because it's developing you a lot of bodies. Likewise, you play Colosseum and Usopp. On top of that, it gives you so many bodies that are going to be hard for them to replace. And on curve, just because of Usopp effect, this always draws you a card, which is huge. It just draws you a card. It draws you a card and plays out 2 other characters. Just a bonkers good card. And it's Dressrosa, so it's searchable from Rebecca. Just insane. Insanely good. So let's look here. So Kiros is a 7-cost blue character who is 9k power, no counter. All right. Already... stat-wise, love the stat line. We needed another 7-cost boss monster. Rebecca is a great 7-cost card. She is not a boss monster. Despite doing boss monster things, she herself is not a boss monster. If you don't have cards in your hand, she doesn't do shit. But she synergizes super well with other Dressrosa cards because you could be adding cards back to your hand and setting up for this Rebecca play pretty easily. So 7-cost Kiros is a card that this card can play. And so this card on play removes a 5-cost or lower. It returns it to their hand. So note, you can put stuff in your own on your own field that you like attacked with that you want to protect back to your hand, or you can put something from theirs back to their hand. So it's not bottom deck removal, which is what we really wanted, but it is in some ways a better Borsellino, and that's just because it's 7 cost. It has better power. It removes a higher cost card. Yes, it doesn't permanently remove it, but it can screw up your tempo. So if your opponent just had their, say they had a 7-Dawn turn and they played a 5-drop and did some other stuff, this just removes that and completely negates that turn for them while developing a 9-cost for herself. And any other character they attacked with the turn before is now at the whim of our heroes swinging into it and removing it. It's really, really strong. In Usopp, it's very good. He's an 8-cost. And in Rebecca, he's just solid because he's good removal and he synergizes with how Rebecca likes to play. And it's another good boss monster for us that can help be disruptive in situations where like we can't get our Luffy off on curve. Say we just didn't hit our mill stuff, which with some of the cards revealed is not going to be as difficult to do now. But let's just say we don't have that mill stuff happening. This card is just a great option for that. I'm very happy about this card. I think stat-wise alone, I like it a lot. Ability is pretty solid. I would love to see bottom decking, but I understand not making it be that power crept, because if this was literally just bottom deck some, it's better Borsellino in every single way. And I think that they want to give options of cards, right? Like, do you run more Dressrosa cards or do you opt into something like that? We'll never opt into it because this card's searchable by Rebecca or by the Rebecca leader or character. So, or technically the next card that we're going to see. So this is our new Leo. He's a 1-drop 2k, 1k counter. Same stat line as the black Leo. Difference being is his on-play effect is a searcher. You have to. He also requires you to rest leader or stage, though. It could be both, either or. Then, if your leader is Usopp, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Reveal up to 2 cards other than Leo that have Dressrosa type. Put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck and trash 1 card from your hand. So it's interesting because the way that this is spaced out, you only get the look at the top 5 if your leader is Usopp. So it is locked to Usopp for that search, which would make me feel like this whole ability is locked to having to have an 8-cost, which would mean it's better in Usopp. It doesn't really support Rebecca. But I think that this is still playable in Rebecca, even if not, because let's say we don't play it on curve and we have to play it after we drop like a 10-drop Kuzan, for instance. This card still goes. But wording-wise, I'm not 100% if this locks all of the ability to the 8 or if this just locks this part, because if this one just locks this part, then it negates the rest of it because of the fact that you don't see anything, so you can't reveal it. but it wouldn't technically lock the rest of it. It just means you can't reveal cards to add to your hand. Basically, what it would be is play one, rest your leader or stage, discard a card. For anybody that's not Usopp, which maybe is a thing, but I 100% doubt you'd ever play this card outside of Usopp, other than if we really needed some weird one-drop text in Rebecca. But for Usopp, this is great. This is a search for 5 cards, reveal 2 cards, put them to your hand, get rid of a dead card out of your hand, fix your hand, which is super good because you don't want to overdraw on Usopp because you want to stay at that 5. So if you lose a character, you can get draw power. So this is really good. The next card that we just got, the next one is Nami. This is for both decks, and this card is interesting. I don't know if this one's necessarily played, but I don't think it's not played. Because on curve early on, this is just really a solid early turn play, right? So this allows you to play non-Dressrosa cards, and the reason for that is a 2-cost, 0 power Dressrosa Straw Hat card, 1k counter. So it's a counter card late at least. You may rest this in one of your leaders or stages with Dressrosa type. Draw 1 card, then trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. So this starts milling you, but instead of looking at the Rebecca effect and adding a card to your hand that's Dressrosa type, which is going to be easier to do with all these Dressrosa archetype cards. But let's just argue we just want to draw. Well, we can draw and then mill 2. So we still get the full of a mill 2 draw card. So on even curve, this is fine. This is a solid turn 1 play. Gives us a pseudo blocker. If our opponent tries to attack, they might debate to attack this so that we don't get more synergy, or they just don't attack this. But if it's an aggro deck and they attack this, it just helps stall us out. It's a pseudo blocker that's going to give us card advantage as the game goes on, and many of our opponents might want to avoid that. So this card could see play in Rebecca. At the moment, I don't know if it would, but it is definitely a card that I could tech in as a 2 of, maybe a 3 of. I'd say 2 of at the max. I think you tech this as a 2 of, actually. Now, the more I think about it, I think you tech this as a 2 of. It's a decent for the even curve. It's decent for the odd curve. It sets up our trash. It draws us cards. It's pretty solid. I think it's playable. It's something that could get played, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up playing it as. That being said, Tony Chopper is in that same vein. He does basically the same thing, except instead of drawing us a card, he mills a card from our opponent if they have 5 or more cards. So this card, I think, is more playable. And so, like, card advantage, Rebecca doesn't need. So this is more or less something that will probably get played in Usopp, so he can maintain card advantage. This is something that will probably be played in Rebecca, because this card helps Rebecca keep card advantage. She already draws enough cards on her own. She doesn't really need extra draw. The mill is nice, but she doesn't need the extra draw as much, especially if we're going to be moving into a more heavy Dressrosa themed deck where we're not going to run almost any non-Dressrosa cards. But this card is really solid because early on it can deny our opponent having a ton of resources to mess with us, and disrupting our opponent while actually adding cards to our trash. And then it makes this card somewhat of a threat for them that they need to remove it because they don't want to keep discarding cards. So this card is a pseudo blocker in the same way, and it kind of does the job that Rebecca needs it to do early, which is disrupt my opponent's hand state so that I can try to get an advantage before they play anything. And then the last card, I think, is the singular most powerful card that Rebecca is gaining from this so far. Like I said, both the Kiros is very strong and is a great boss monster that we're going to be loving, and the Rebecca is going to be playable even if it is gated by this 8 across the board, which I don't think it is, but it might be. If it is gated by this, then it's still very playable. It's just we have to play around. It can't be played on curve like it can in Usopp. Whereas this could be played at a curve or late or whatever. This card is just good. Like, this card is just solid. Franky, on the other hand, is just insanely strong for Rebecca. And a big part of that is just his effect is insane. So he's a 4-drop, 5 power blocker. Hell yeah. Rebecca wants that stat line. We've had it with something like King Riku, but Riku doesn't do much for Rebecca in the fact that if you don't have another character, his ability doesn't do anything. Whereas with Franky, he's just a blocker that people really hate having to attack into, because if they somehow get rid of your Kiros, this just brings it back. So Franky says, when KO'd, play up to 1 3-cost or lower Dressrosa type character from your trash rested. So this is insane because it says when KO'd. and not by effect, not by anything. So like if you block with it and it's KO'd, you get a Dressrosa character back, which is great. But on your turn, you can use Orlumbus to KO this, to get the -4 on something, to then grab a Kiros to KO their thing. Or he can get you back a Mon Cherie at the end of your opponent's turn, right? Like say your opponent swings in with their last character, you block with this, he dies, you get a Mon Cherie gets you back the Franky to play the Franky the next turn. That's craziness. So there's a lot of cool things that this Franky can offer. I think this card is insanely good. It is what I was hoping King Riku would be for the deck, but like better, because it just synergizes so well with what Rebecca wants to do already. 3 cost and lower is really, really good. We don't have a whole lot that can target under 3 cost. So getting back those cards, like our Leos, like our Kiroses, like our Rebecca Searchers. Shoot, worst case scenario, this gets us back a Rebecca Searcher to get us a card to our hand after our opponent's turn, which can set up our Orlumbus for the following turn, because now we have a Rebecca Searcher that we can KO with the Orlumbus. That's so good. It could get back the Kiros. Even if it doesn't KO something, it sets up the Kiros ready for the next turn. Even if we don't have stage, it bails us out of not having stage early. So like the card is just insanely versatile and very, very strong. And it's not gated by black, it's only gated by Dressrosa. So if we see any good blue early drop, low drop cards that we want to get with Dressrosa, Franky has the capacity of grabbing those. So far in our spoiler season, guys, our cards are looking really, really strong. It's looking like Rebecca is going to have some solid support from this. The Usopp deck already, because of its top end here, is looking really solid. I'm hoping we're going to get some other cards that care about cost in this deck, because otherwise, if it's just this card, then it's kind of gimmicky and weird, and it was just a way to keep this from being insane in Rebecca, I guess. But like, this part of the ability is only going to be there as a pseudo protection part for your characters, which is nice. It's not bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of odd choice if this is the only one. So I imagine we're going to get more tech cards around this Dressrosa increased cost ability. But otherwise, I think that Usopp's going to be pretty solid, and I think Rebecca is going to be so happy with some of these tech cards and some of these options that we're going to have. It's going to be making it way more difficult to figure out what you want to build in your decks, but it's going to be pretty easy to see that Usopp can be a much better tempo deck than Rebecca per se. He may not even build for like a lot of removal, because he doesn't get the value of like Kiros or something like that, like a 3-drop Kiros. He's going to be building to go wide and just kind of swing in and beat your opponent down before they can and make it hard to remove. And if they do remove, you get to draw power and try to do it again. So he's like an aggro deck that probably won't run out of fuel. Whereas Rebecca's going to be more of the control build of the blue-black. So I really like the idea of making these two very distinct styles, because the kind of archetype already is kind of split between those to begin with, and now we have a leader that is going to fit to one of those archetypes a bit more. Whereas the other one, and you can support both with some interesting tech cards for what the general archetype wants to do, which is a lot of recursion, a lot of self-milling. But let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys enjoy the cards as they're coming out. I think this is going to be a really fun set, and I cannot wait. It makes me loathe OP10 being in the way. But hopefully by March, guys, I'm going to have some cool deck techs for us to be building and playing with. And let me know what you guys think of the cards. And I hope to see you in the next video. And until then, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.